Well, ladies and gentlemen, a wonderful good afternoon. Thank you to have shown up in such a large number. I would like to start with two little remarks and one little survey. The first remark is, when I've been asked to hold the talk, it has, people told me, well, try to keep it as non-technical as possible. So basically, this will be a quite non-technical talk. So I will talk about statistical machine translation, but we will have just a light swim in this room. For people who really want to have the tricky questions and want to know more about statistical machine translation and our solution, please come to our poster session later on. Matthias Müller from the University of Zurich is waiting for you and for your questions. And the second part is Finnova develops banking software. So why am I standing here talking about statistical machine translation? Well, I do because out of these 400 people working for Finnova, there is a small tribe, like in Asterix and Obelix, that resists the invader, and the small tribe is the document management team trying to build the language competence center of the company. So we do produce solutions for specific language application problems, but we produce them internally for our company. And the title of the talk was about Cooldowns for managers regarding statistical machine translation and the maturity stage of the technology. Now just one small question. Who in the audience can state that on the business side he or she is a manager? Just who is a manager? Okay, I see some hands. Now, are there any Scrum Master in the room or product owners? Scrum Master, product owners, okay. May I ask, are there any students that are sharing student apartments and are managing the fridge or the vacuum cleaner or anything else? Yes, there are some. Okay. Why do I ask this? I ask this because managers have one thing in common. And IT managers, the example I'm showing here, I took it from Geek and Pokes. And it makes always my day when I read it. So this is a classical situation in a typical IT company. So you see a certain reflection. And then just memorize the important facts. But besides this, what is this project manager doing actually? Well, if you think about it, maybe, but basically, IT managers bridge gaps, and that's what all managers do all the time. You either bridge gaps between projects and expectations, you bridge gaps between reality and projects, between stakeholder expectations and what you really have to offer. So that's always a managing task, and this is not only concerning people in business that are managers, but concerning all of us. So basically, when I talk about the management side, all of you are entitled to talk with me about this topic. And about our project, it was a project that we developed with the Computational Linguistics unit at the University of Zurich, and it's a small project. It's a project that is not really bleeding edge, but it works. It works very well for 4 years already. We reached our targets, and it's extremely a stable product that we developed in-house for our company. And I'd like to share with you some key factors that led to this success. And maybe share some of the pitfalls and some of the problems we encountered, and maybe also share with you some of the wrong questions we ask sometimes. And then share your experience with mine. So basically these are the key factors. And well, it comes with no surprise. We have a dedicated in-house team and great partners on board for this project. We had a cross-functional team. Document management at Finnova is organized in a language technology unit, in a classical translation unit, and a unit that takes care of content management and information in general. So we had there a unique knowledge of language that went across the whole translation value chain, or across the whole language value chain. And this came as an unexpected advantage. Then, of course, value-added technology and features. That's what also the open source scene says, and we believe them in this specific project. Of course, language concepts, operational level agreements in-house, the budget and budget constraints are in place. That's a point I will address later on. And I guess a company or an organization needs to be ready for statistical machine translation. Even language units in general needs to be ready for that kind of task. And the question you should ask yourself is there maybe another solution for optimization than using statistical machine translation? And of course, the focus business case helps, especially on the C-level. So, what was the project? Finnova translates around 6,000 customer support messages in software release letters from German to English every year. We have a release letter in 2 languages that we offer our clients. And the aim was to develop a translation system that helps translate those texts automatically. That's what we thought at the beginning. And of course, in statistical machine translation, usually you say, okay, if you use it within a workflow, in a more or less proper way, you will be able to cut costs by between 20 and 30% of the regular costs you're facing. So that's what we wanted to check, if it's possible to do it in our domain. And for my bosses, I promised a return on investment within 2 years. That's also reaching gaps. So basically, of course, a cool project cannot be done with cool partners, and I'm standing here not on my own, but on behalf of the people you see here on the screen. And what you see here is a great collaboration between academics and industry on the one hand, and you do see also, well, what you don't see is, besides the academic brains, we have also specialists in computational linguistics on the industry side, and translators and project manager from the translation side. So these were our partners we worked with in this project. Then what we chose is Moses, also a component, a statistical machine translation component that has evolved very nicely. For us, very important was the fact that we wanted to have a tool hosted in-house. I mean, we cannot afford to have our messages translated by Google or any other open source tool that will be afterwards publicly available, even though our colleagues at Google and in other companies do a terrific work, but there are some data that we prefer to keep private. Another point was that the statistical machine translation system offered itself for customization. And the major point back in 2012, 2013, at that time it was a new feature, was that our in-domain data that we used for training could be given more weight by a certain weighting algorithm. And that was, at that time, a contribution to the Moses statistical machine translation system by Rico Senrik that we had in our project as well. And of course, clever customized preprocessing and post-processing helps to avoid certain problems that arise by default when you use statistical machine translation. And flexible output formats at the end were the winning key to keep the workflow simple. So these were the key factors on the technology part. Here just a small view on the corpora we employed in the project. As you can see, our in-domain data compared to the data we used for training from the at-domain sections is in a relation of about 50 to 1. So, of course, we were interested to have as much weight coming from our data as possible. And the figures you see here are certainly about the minimum figure you need as a volume to train a statistical machine translation system. Usually, you say about 10 million segments. From 10 million segments on, you may start with such a training. This just gives you an idea about what amount of text you would need for training the system separately. I mentioned the key factors that led afterwards to combine the statistical machine translation system with a CAT tool, also the computer-aided translation tool workflow, and we decided to keep it simple, and we decided to combine human translation sources with automatically produced translation resources from the statistical machine translation system. So basically, the pivotal document was the TMX format. TMX is a format that is used in the computer-aided translation side usually to generate parallel texts and keep it as translation memory in the systems. So that when a translator come across a sentence that they have already translated, they usually get automatic an offer from the translation memory system to take over. And in this case, we took the automatic translation KMX, added to the source text, made a pre-translation, generated in the CAT tool source and target segments, and that is basically what in the computer-aided translation tools would be considered as the first translator. So basically, the first translator would have been replaced by the TMX proposal that has been automatically generated. Later on, the source and target segments would have been reworked, post-edited by human translators, but this time not with the automatically generated TMX, but with the TMX that the human translators use. In this way, we ensured that the quality assurance part would not be neglected. And so we combined basically some advantages from the statistical machine translation side with the CAT tools. And the result afterwards would always be the target text and the translation memory that has been checked by human translators. And this approach, of course, took a while. As you see, so more sophisticated solutions would have been possible, of course. Separate databases and some more components, etc. But sometimes the simple solutions are the best, and to keep the solution flexible helps also on the vendor side. So we opted for a very simple integration in this case. Feedback. that we received. Well, here now, we knew, okay, we have a statistical machine translation that performs great. We have nice blue score and good average. That's at least what the people told me. And I believed them, and so we went and asked the user at the end. And here, you won't be able to read it. I just put some comments of the user. We made regular surveys about the quality of our translation tool every time we made a further step, or at least every time we thought we would make a further step. And here are the comments. Well, on the one side, people say, wow, cool, I see a net improvement, or well, much worse than in July, or I failed to see much, if any, improvement. And by the way, these were 3 different translators working on the same texts that have been translated automatically. So, as you can see, the question you need to ask yourself is, well, how can we talk about great blue scores, and on the other side, the end user will have such a varied idea of the outcome. Well, in this case, you remember, managers bridge the gap. There is also let's say, an outcome on the business side. And of course, this chart has been faked by myself, so that's what you see. But basically, you see the bluish bars. These were internal benchmark of ours at the time when everyone in the team had to translate release letters. I mean, the English translators did it, the French translators did it, we did it, etc. because the volume of these release letters come at a certain moment, and we talk about 500 to 800 tickets, and these need to be translated within 5 days. So that's what we did at the beginning. Then we started to outsource the text, and then we started to implement the post-editing process. And as you can see here, these are the expenditures we had, and these were, of course, the planned costs we wanted to achieve. And well, the correlation is only by chance, by the way, but you can see that there is a net gain in time, because these tickets are being translated by an external translation vendor, and there we usually pay by the amount of time that the translator uses in translating these tickets. And since the ticket content rests invariable, this is the measure we can use to see how well we performed. And that's how well it worked. And I can say that we could reach our target. So what I can say now is, if set up in a correct way, statistical machine translation can be used in our domain to reduce costs and to keep the workflow simple. Now, of course, do and don'ts, that's what the title of the presentation is. And here I really want to show a couple of do's that we did and a couple of don'ts that we should not have done. Basically, the one thing that pops up, and the one most important thing is, can I afford the linguistic preconditioning of my translators? This is the right question to ask. The question here, what kinds of texts are especially fit for SLT, is obsolete, because if you have, let's say, a parallel corpora of all the literature in the world, you would be able to translate literature. Or if you would have enough corpora to do marketing campaigns, you could train the system to produce marketing campaign texts. So the main question you need to ask is, if you have, let's say, translators that work on marketing texts and need to work with different stakeholders, can you afford to do a preconditioning by giving them an automated translation to start with? And the answer probably, I don't know if there are any marketing specialists in here, the answer should be no, because the translator will always need to see the environment and choose creatively. So that was the main question that we only asked at the end. And this is something that you might want to ask at the beginning. In our case, of course, we talk about technical texts that are not asking for a lot of creativity in this kind, but only for solid craftsmanship when you translate it. But that was the thing that we only saw at the end. And the second question that is certainly interesting to check is post-editing. Is it the same as proofreading or reviewing? That's an ongoing discussion on the translator side in the translation community. That's an open question. But basically, I believe it needs probably some other skills. But still, it's interesting to get in touch with your translation vendor or with your translation team to check if it's acceptable. And concerning quality assurance, you always need to ask, well, how much quality assurance do we really want, or how much quality assurance can we afford? I mean, larger corporations, I don't know if you had a chance to read the release letters of Microsoft or Oracle or so, but if you read through them, you will see that not every single ticket has been proofread. Let's put it this way. So basically, concerning takeaways, also concerning future developments, I believe statistical machine translation is an interesting field. It will advance, it will get better, but it will only be successful in industry if you merge the capability of statistical machine translation with the capability of human translators. You need to combine those two to get effective results, basically. And future developments, who knows, maybe neural network translation could be the next step where we can see how far we can go with it. As takeaways that I can offer, managers bridge gaps, basically. And for us, a cross-functional end-to-end view of the whole language chain is very helpful. So when you have the whole language value chain or the whole translation value chain inside, you can't go wrong because you will take all stakeholders into account. And statistical machine translation goes industrial because you can use it for many real language challenges, for any language pair, for any text type, for any domain. And application can be used, the same kernel can be used, for example, as a self-service translation desk that has been, for example, implemented at Credit Suisse, and for automatic pre-translation and translation on demand. Thank you.
Any questions, comments?
Have you had any response from your end users, the readers?
The readers?
Customers?
No. That's a good sign. They didn't complain. But we didn't make a separate review.
How was the reaction of the professional human translators when suddenly they have a machine that takes their job?
Yeah.
Offended?
that's exactly the point where you need to explain that this is not the case at all. For me, and this is something I mentioned in the first slide, but didn't say it loud. Translation resources and human translators are very precious. In our case, in my company, I prefer to have my translators work on the stuff that goes to our clients. I want to let them work on high-level documents where their creativity and where the language feeling and the language fit needs to be is crucial. And I want to take away some work that I'm not talking about tedious work, but I'm talking about repetitive work that the machine can do better to a certain extent. So that's the philosophical point of view I'm standing for. So, and you might start with the idea, okay, we are gonna, oh, not you, but maybe your boss starts with the idea, okay, you implement a statistical machine translation and then we'll lay off all the human translators. It's totally wrong. If you care about your resources, and you should, because translation is extremely valuable, then you need to take care that your people work on the right stuff. And that's what we did. And that's what we explained.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I work on a different field. We work with coding, medical diagnosis, and there are professional humans that do just the same. And I think just the same.
Yeah.
Just make the same.
Okay.